Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's virtual workshop. My name is Brooke Oliveri. I am the manager here at the Long Island Health Collaborative. So as you can see, this program is all about staying safe on our streets, and it is a virtual workshop about bicycle and pedestrian safety. So the Long Island Health Collaborative has teamed up with the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety to bring you the Walk Safe Long Island initiative. So this program is all about educating Long Islanders about pedestrian and cyclist safety. Today, the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety team will be presenting information about these really important topics. And laws that are in place to ultimately keep us safe. So before we meet the panelists, just a little more information about the coalition and the collaborative. So Walk Safe Long Island is produced for the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety, and it's funded by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration with a grant from the New York State Governor's Traffic Safety Committee. So that's how Walk Safe Long Island came to be. Here's just a little more information about the coalition and the collaborative and what each respective organization does individually. And now it's time to meet the panelists. So first up, we have Cynthia Brown. She is the Executive Director of the New York Coalition for Transportation Safety. Also on today's panel is Mark Hofacker, Program Facilitator and Child Safety Seat Car Technician for NYCTS, the coalition. We're also joined by Lowell Wolf, Program Facilitator here at NYCTS and Associate Professor at Farmingdale State College. And also on the team behind the scenes today is Lynn Margaret Brown. She is Program Coordinator, Educator, Social Media and Web Manager for NYCTS, and she will be the one kindly advancing our slides during today's program. So now that you've met everyone on the team, I'm going to turn it over to Cindy.
All right. Why do we need a public workshop on pedestrian and bicycle safety? For those of you who have not kept up with the current roadway statistics, the problem since COVID has just gotten so much worse than it was prior to it. So we really are concerned about keeping people safe. So one of the reasons that we need a public workshop is so we can educate the public about vehicle and traffic laws that pertain to pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists. And there was a whole other piece there. To reduce the number of pedestrian bicyclist deaths and injuries on Long Island, to provide best practices information to keep pedestrians and bicyclists safe, to raise awareness to emerging issues such as e-bikes, which just as of this morning, I saw that the number of countries where e-bikes are becoming one of the prominent sources of transportation has gone up about 40% in the past year. Scooters and motorbikes, which are referred to now as micro-mobility devices, are having a real impact on pedestrian safety, particularly young people who ride scooters on sidewalks. They're responsible for the majority of the pedestrian accidents there. And again, as I mentioned, to recognize how COVID-19 has impacted traffic safety, particularly in the sense that motor vehicles are now traveling at much higher speeds on our nation's highways. Next. New York State laws that pertain to pedestrians and bicyclists. It's important for you to know these laws that, you know what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do, and when you have the right of way, because many pedestrian crashes occur at intersections and they occur as a result of turning vehicles. So one of the things we hope that you'll take away from this today is exactly how to keep yourself safe. You'll learn about the hindrances to pedestrians crossing a road safely, about roadway enhancements that make it easier for pedestrians to cross, crosswalk signals, new devices that accentuate crosswalks or roadway crossings. roadway designs that are proven to increase safe street crossings for pedestrians, particularly if they're wide streets and many-laned highways or roadways. And then again, the introduction to new mobility devices like scooters and e-bikes that are beginning to impact our ability to safely cross streets or bike lanes. And also the fact that these new devices are now going to be available as rentals, the same way many towns now have, like New York City has City Bike. Next. Long Island hit and runs on the rise, and they're certainly making headlines. The hit and runs, the majority of crashes that are concerning pedestrians and possibly bicyclists are the result of hit and runs. You can see from here, February 14th, February 21st, February 5th, January 30th, January 13th. It's almost one a week. And it's really, really upsetting. So, you know, we're hoping that when you take your takeaway from this presentation will be how to avoid this.
And I would mention that, you know, there are some changes in the traffic safety world today because of the pandemic. And one is, and you may think of it as a good thing, that there's less cars on the road. Maybe they're coming back, but we're also seeing, because there's less cars, people are speeding a lot more. Speed has become a big issue, hence these headlines that we have. And there aren't as many people observing these crashes because there's just less people out. So that's a current trend, and it's an unsettling trend.
Okay, next. Well, this is sort of just reinforcing what we said earlier, that the pedestrian death toll in states rises. There is one pedestrian struck by a motorist every 33 minutes in the United States, and almost 162,000 people killed or injured. AAA Northeast is the one who provided these statistics, and they also conduct road safety and driver safety programs the same as we do. The pedestrian deaths on Long Island are among the highest in the US, and they are absolutely among the highest in New York. Suffolk and Nassau counties are just terrible right now for motor vehicle deaths. Okay, next.
I'd like to talk a little bit about New York State pedestrian safety laws, because we do emphasize that there's speed as a major factor when it comes to injuries, but also there's a lot that pedestrians in their own right could do to protect themselves. A lot of it is just common sense. For instance, cross streets at marked crosswalks or intersections. Motorists have the right of way at all locations other than intersections and marked crosswalks. So obviously, if they are available, pedestrians will want to use crosswalks, marked locations designated for them to cross. Otherwise, they're taking a big risk, and motorists, as we just stated, do have the right of way at these other locations. So just because you're a pedestrian doesn't mean you automatically have the right of way. You have the right of way if you are crossing a road at a designated location. So obey the walk, don't walk signs. Always walk on the sidewalk if there is one. That's an important point to make. Walk facing traffic if there is no sidewalk. Okay, meaning don't walk with the direction the traffic is going in, walk against it. You want to see vehicles, their headlights. You want to see them going in the opposite direction you are. That might be counterintuitive. If you're riding a bicycle, that doesn't count. But we're talking strictly about pedestrians now. So walk facing traffic if there's no sidewalk. Pedestrians have the right of way when a car is pulling in or out of traffic across a sidewalk. Okay, so bear that in mind. That doesn't mean that if somebody's pulling out of their driveway, you should take it for granted that they see you. No, still take precautions, but bear in mind that if you're on a sidewalk, you do have the right of way. This is important. Make eye contact with drivers whenever possible to ensure visibility, especially if you're walking on a non-sidewalk road. You want to make sure that they see you, and that's a nonverbal communication form. The best thing you could do if you can make eye contact with that driver, the vehicle operator, so they know that you are there, It's sort of a way of guaranteeing that at least they recognize the fact that there's a pedestrian in the roadway. So try not to ignore that fact. And finally, pedestrians are not allowed on limited access roads such as expressways or interstates, nor are they allowed on entrance or exit ramps on those roads. So keep away from highways, major roadways where there is a lot of speed, where there is a lot of traffic. That doesn't mean necessarily staying off of turnpikes or other roads that are designated for pedestrians to use if there's a sidewalk. We're talking about major highways where there's a lot of speed, where it's unusual to see an individual crossing the street. That's a no-no. Can't do that. Next, please. What we see here is the Longwood Public Library, right on Middle Country Road. And something interesting, you do have a crosswalk in the left picture. You could see that. That takes you directly from the library and its parking lot across Middle Country Road. And this is a perfect example of a proper place to cross. The only problem here, you have a traffic light, and once that light turns green, you would know that it's appropriate for you to go, common sense. Only problem here is we don't know exactly what the need would be for anyone to cross the road there. That's an undeveloped piece of property. But nonetheless, that's a perfect example of a location where you do have the right of way, of course, when you have a green signal or walk sign, etc. Any questions or remarks from any other panel members at this point?
No, I was just going to say, I agree that it looks like it really belongs there, and it's fine, but there's no place that it takes you. There's not parking on the other side of this crosswalk. And I can't even tell if there's a sidewalk. So I'm uncertain as to why it was placed there, but it's there.
And it's a good example of a crosswalk. I just don't know what awaits at the other end of the street, but nonetheless, that's what is currently available across the street, crossing the street at the Longwood Library.
If you look at the picture of the library, it's kind of hard to see, but there is a bike rack there. You have a bike rack in front of your library, so you can ride your bike to the library. And you have parking.
Okay, next, please. All right, this is a great example. Again, we have on the left picture, a crosswalk and the appropriate way that most people would feel comfortable and safe going into a community. And as you see there, two things of importance. Everyone's using the crosswalk, the designated painted stripes, and they're also going in a large group. So it's easy to notice them. Even if the weather was not a clear sunny day as in that picture, it's easy to spot that these people are in a large group, and there's in this sense, there's safety in numbers. Unfortunately, the example on the right is very common in rural areas and some of the outer suburbs, locations where there just are no sidewalks. And unfortunately, these two pedestrians, if I'm including the canine, they have some issues. Besides the fact that there is no sidewalk, they are also walking in the direction of traffic, which again, that's a dangerous thing. As I mentioned before, you want to maintain eye contact whenever possible if there are no sidewalks with vehicle operators. So of course, I'm sure this lady does not have eyes behind her head and she is not maintaining eye contact. So this is a good example of a dangerous situation for pedestrians. Next, please. On that same note, what would make you feel safer? The situation on the left shows obviously a location where there's a road, but there is no sidewalk. And again, we would recommend in a situation like that, you go against traffic, you face the direction traffic is coming so that you can make eye contact with the drivers. Obviously, the right photograph would be the ideal situation. A designated sidewalk where pedestrians would feel safer and where they could walk in whichever direction they want. There's no need to make eye contact if you're on the sidewalk. Okay, next.
All right. There are some recommendations that we think it's a good idea for pedestrians to follow because these are practices that have been proven. So most crossing or crosswalks and traffic signals on Long Island have a device on them that says you have to push the button if you're going to get the crosswalk light. So once the walk icon comes on, you can now cross the street, but you still have to always watch for turning vehicles, because at an intersection, you're likely to have vehicles waiting for the pedestrians to finish crossing before they can make the turn. If you don't push this button, you are not going to have the same amount of time. And in some instances and in some locations, the crosswalk won't come on, the cross light won't come on at all. So it's very important to just push that button. Even if it turns out that it doesn't work, at least you tried. Also, trucks and buses, you need to be aware of this at intersections in particular, because the drivers of these vehicles sit up so high, they can't often see the person who is standing very close to them. So it's a good idea to stand a little bit back from the curb. Again, try to signal the driver of the truck or the bus, or make eye contact so they know that you're waiting to cross the street. Also, if you are a slow walker or you require the use of a cane or a walker, I don't recommend that you cross if the light is already green when you get to it. I would suggest that you wait till you get a fresh green light to cross, unless the light happens to be a countdown signal and you know that you can make it across the street in 20 or 30 seconds. The amount of time given to cross varies with the width of the roadway that you're crossing, so it won't be the same every place that you see one.
Just wanted to mention, getting back to the trucks and buses, you might think that some of these vehicle operators are being aggressive and being rude. And again, they're not. They just may not even see you if you're in the middle of the crosswalk and they just keep going. Stop. They don't, most likely they don't see you. It's not a matter of rudeness or trying to cut you off. It's the fact that because of the height difference, they may not see you at all. So, you know, don't take it personal. Wait and you'll be safe.
Next. All right, these are examples of other roadway designs and devices that have been developed to make it safer for people to cross the street. A road diet is something that's implemented to reduce vehicle speeds, and it can be anything from a narrowing of the roadway by striping it differently, by adding a turning lane, by in some areas putting in speed bumps, by extending the sidewalk out further into the crosswalk so that you have a shorter distance to cross. Those are examples of road diets. A pedestrian refuge are islands that have been constructed to divide the roadway, especially a wide roadway, and so that if you can't make it all the way across, you can stand in this pedestrian refuge and wait until the light changes again. Raised crosswalks are another example of something that would reduce vehicle speeds. You may have seen there are sometimes, instead of just striping, the crosswalk is made from brick or another device, or it's raised slightly so that, you know, slows down the vehicle speeds. There are also now many visibility enhancements, such as the crosswalk lighting, flashing signals, warning signs of pedestrians crossing in, ahead of you and whatever. And then one of the best new devices is the leading pedestrian interval traffic signal at intersections that already had a signal that allows the pedestrian to walk and have the walk light before the green light comes on for motor vehicles. So usually you have 3 to 4 to 5 seconds to get into the crosswalk and start to cross before the car or truck or bus gets their signal that it's okay to go. So these are all meant to cut down on pedestrian deaths and injuries. Next.
Okay, now we'll talk about some bicycle laws. New York State has a vehicle and traffic law book. It's thick. It's about this thick. And there's a very large section devoted to cyclists. So there are a lot of laws. We're only going to go through some of them. But it's important to realize that cyclists have a lot of laws that they need to abide by. And first of all, a cyclist, we follow the same laws and rules of the road as motorists do. So that means a stop sign is a stop sign for us on a bicycle. A red light, we are supposed to stop, at a red light. A lot of people don't, but theoretically that is the law. You have the legal right to share the road on public highways. You can't be on the highway, just like pedestrians, but cyclists adult cyclists should be out riding with traffic on the right side. Children, if in the boroughs in New York City, by law, under the age of 13, you have to ride on the sidewalk. We recommend that children, we would follow that also, that children, if you're riding with your children, have them on the sidewalk at first until they develop further skills. So we have to ride with traffic when we're on our bicycle. That is different than the pedestrian who is facing the driver, walking against traffic. If the type of crash, if you were to be riding your bicycle and hit a car head on, that would be a very severe crash. When you're riding with traffic, which is predictable for drivers, they see you're going the same way, but it's also a different type of crash if somebody bumps you from behind. The energy of that crash is going to be dispersed more. So very, very important that we ride with traffic. I don't know that everybody knows that is the law. With regards to bike helmets, children, this is New York State law, children under the age of 14 and have to wear a helmet. Not between birth and the age of 1, you should not be carrying your child, driving them around in a carrier. They shouldn't be on bicycle at all. They should not be wearing a bike helmet. Their neck muscles are not strong enough to wear the helmet. So it's noted here in the bullet point, that's New York State law under the age of 14. Last year, Nassau County changed their law. They made it under the age of 18. Localities have the right to make their own laws. You may have heard, or you may have heard that Suffolk County Legislature a few months ago, not too long ago, maybe 2 months ago, changed some bicycle laws, and they said helmets under the age of 18, but that was actually not put into law because the county executive, Steve Ballone, vetoed that bill. So Suffolk County law still currently is under the age of 14. And if the law says, if a police officer sees a child without a helmet, brings them to the parent, it's kind of a hard law to enforce. Just so the parents, the guardian is going to get the summons. The child's not going to get a summons. It's a $50 fine. And if you get that fine, you do have the right, you can go out and buy a bicycle helmet before you'd have to go to court, and that summons would be thrown away. Next.
By the way, that that law that was vetoed is under review right now. From what I understand, with the Suffolk County Legislature, they're rewriting some of the fine points. So that law is not dead in the water. It's under review. Some revisions being made. Okay, so a few more laws. So first of all, let's just think about the bicycle itself. What's on the bicycle? So by law, your bicycle has to have a white reflector in the front and a red reflector in the rear. Most of the times when you buy a bicycle, they're going to be on there. If they're not, reflectors are very, very cheap to buy, or they break, you can put them on. You also, most bicycles will have reflectors on the pedals and spoke reflectors. The pedal reflectors are very good, especially at night, because car lights tend to go down.
So they'll see that reflector, and the spoke reflectors are also very good in low visibility because the car is perpendicular. Those, you're moving, those reflectors move when you're riding your bike and you're perpendicular to the car, so they see you. Along the same lines, if you're riding at nighttime, just like cars, a little before the sun goes down, a little after the sun comes up in the morning, you have to have a light on a bike, not just a reflector. And it has to be a white light in the front, and it has to project, by law, a certain number of feet. And you have to have a red reflector, a red light in the back if you're riding at night. I should have mentioned really to start, if you think of, we're all drivers, or most of us are drivers. I think one thing we try to tell people when we do bike safety is to think of the bicycle as a vehicle. It's a non-motorized vehicle. Our cars have motors in them. Some bikes have motors, but most of them are non-motorized. And you see the similarities, and with the laws too, in that you have, on your car, you have white headlights in the front, you have red brake lights on the back. On a bicycle, we have a white light in the front, we have red in the back. Similarities to the different types of a vehicle. Little known law is that a bike must have a bell or a horn. Little known, it's good to have, you should have it. I think the point that I would make there, I think the intent of that law, the important point is communication. When you're sharing the road with other road users, pedestrians, cars, it's communicating with other people. If it's by bell or horn, or actually you can actually talk on the bicycle, it's an important aspect of safety. Next. All right, so let's just talk a little bit more about bike helmets. I should point out that the law is helmets on a bicycle, scooter, roller skates, or a skateboard. So the helmet law applies to all those things. So, you've got some photos here, and it's one thing to have a helmet, but to take a few minutes out and make sure that your helmet works correctly, helmets are very effective in reducing brain injury, preventing traumatic brain injury. But if you're not wearing the helmet correctly, it's going to be less effective. So you've got some diagrams. The top diagram showed you that when you put it on, it's parallel to the ground, and it's coming down over your forehead. Let me take my glasses off. And when you wear it, you should be getting 2 fingers from your eyebrows to the bottom of the helmet. I got my helmet here to show you. Some helmets, I don't know if you can see this, they're adjustable. You have this dial in the back. I got this really big head. So let me show you. If I wear a helmet like that, it's more like 3-4 fingers. It's not doing me much good. So when I dial it back, I put it on, comes down over my forehead. Now I've got the 2 fingers. So on the side, the lower right diagram shows you this plastic that you can adjust. I'm trying to show it to you here. It slides up and down. Slide it down, or for your children, adjust the helmet so it's at the bottom of your ear. It should sort of form a V at the bottom of your ear. A lot of people have them down really low, way too low. So that's adjustable based on, your size. You put them in the right spot. And this part, so I see a lot of people when I'm riding my bike, they don't even clip this. I don't know why they're wearing a helmet. It's not going to be particularly effective if it falls off when you're riding. So when you clip it, you want to get about 1 finger between the strap and your chin so it's snug. And then when you're wearing a helmet, some people, when you shake your head, it's not going to move too much. If it's very loose, then this is probably not adjusted correctly, or this is too loose. So you want it to be snug, wear the helmet correctly. We do a lot of work with children in terms of bike riding. And one thing we've learned for parents out there is, at least we've seen A lot of 8, 9-year-old children will come to an event and they'll have a helmet, but it's too small for them. Maybe the parents bought them a helmet, their first helmet when they were age 4. Their heads are growing. Luckily, my head's not grown, but the children's heads are growing and they need a bigger helmet. So if you think of that fine for your child not wearing helmets, $50 that you might have to pay, bike helmets are a very good investment. They don't have to be expensive. There's a wide range. Go out. It's suggested with children, maybe take them to a bike store, let them pick out their own helmets, so it's something that they like, so they're more likely to wear it. Get them to start wearing the helmets as soon as, they're getting on the bike, even if they're on a little tricycle at age 3, put a helmet on. Just like you get used to wearing your seatbelt, wear your helmet. I've got some silly little reflective stickers on my helmet, just to make it brighter. Some people put lights on the helmets. Use a helmet as an adult, as a parent. I think it's important, or just a member of the community. For adults, I mean, we all want to prevent brain injuries. Wear a helmet. You be a role model for kids in the community. Next.
Mark, I have a question. The helmet that you're wearing now is only for bicycles?
Oh, good question. Good question. This, if you see it, this is a typical bike helmet. Some are adjustable, some aren't. There's another type of helmet. It's called a multi-sport helmet. Usually they're black, but they don't have to be. They're cut a little higher up here, and the multi-sport helmet has more protection in the back. So we recommend, if your child is on a scooter a lot or doing a skateboard, maybe they can wear a bike helmet. It's going to help them. But if they have a multi-sport helmet, they might want, and if they're skateboarding a lot, they might want the multi-sport, because you have a tendency to fall backwards when you're on a skateboard. Bicycles, you tend to go forward, so therefore you want some extra protection up here. Skateboard maybe is going back. So you have different type of helmets. Boys tend to think multi-sport helmets are cool. So good point, Lo, that there are different type of helmets that serve different functions.
And dispose of them if you ever are in the accident. You want to get rid of those and replace them.
Good point too. So if you happen to fall, if it get crashed, replace them. And inside you can't see it, but I have a sticker. My helmet's from 2016. Helmets by law have to be certified. That's not so important, but hopefully you have a sticker in there that'll tell you how old your helmet is. If you have a helmet and your sticker says it's from 2002, I would suggest replacing it. It's not going to be as effective. If it's not there, it's probably because it's too old. Thanks, Lo. Next.
This is an example of what we would call designated bike lanes. Now, there are some locations, like for instance, Middle Country Road. If you look at Middle Country Road, I believe it's just to the east of the library, there's a sign that says bike route. Now, what that means is that there's a designated location where bicycles could share the road with motorists. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have a designated or a dedicated, rather, bicycle lane. What we have in these examples here, these two pictures, the one on the left where it says bike lane, that is a dedicated location specifically for cyclists. Obviously, there's a problem here because that black sedan is parked or is located in a bike lane, and it's not supposed to be there. That is the same thing, just as that should be treated the same as a regular motor lane on a regular highway or regular street, except it's just for bicycles and for other motorized, non-automobile, non-truck vehicles. What we have in the picture to the right, which many of you may be familiar with, is the reworking that was done on Route 347. As you could see, besides some construction work done to replace the existing road work and to introduce some vegetation and soundproofing, in addition, when Route 347 had this reconstruction job done, actual dedicated paths for cyclists were created, and they are, as you can see here, separate from the road. This is a very safe way for cyclists to go about utilizing roads, because obviously on the right you see those, and it's painted on the floor. Those are locations for cyclists to use. There's no need for them to have to go into the street traffic where the motorized vehicles are. So ideally, that type of dedicated bike lane would be the best to utilize. But quite often you will see what's in the left picture. You're sharing the road, but you have a special location that is dedicated just for cyclists. Again, the other choice would be a bike route where you share the road and share the lanes with motorized vehicles. Next, please. Here's a good example of a situation where you have cyclists that are sharing the road, obviously with motorized vehicles, and something that both cyclists and motorists need to be leery of, the fact that you are sharing the road and accidents will happen. So as it states here, remain alert. Watch out for cars parked in bicycle lanes and drivers exiting their cars without looking. When you are sharing the road, quite often you have to look. A lot of people forget that, you know, there are drivers out there, whether they're motor vehicles, cyclists, micro vehicles being used. They are out there. Use precaution, common sense. You're going to open a door, swing it open. Before you do that, just make sure there's nobody behind you. Look both ways. There could be a blind spot, just as there are when you're driving your motor vehicle. You want to make sure, and you want to make a left turn, say, you're going to do a visual look. You're not just going to depend on putting blinkers on. Well, the same thing if you're parked. Make sure that you look before you open that door and swing it open. And of course, cyclists need to be careful. Quite often you'll see a situation like this happen where a cyclist is all of a sudden, without knowing why, they're weaving into your lane. If you're a driver, all of a sudden they're just veering into the lane from the left, from the right, they're going into the left, into your lane. And you might be saying, why is this slow moving cyclist all of a sudden cutting me off? There could be a reason for it. It could be a situation like this. Somebody is opening the door and they're fearful they're going to slam right into it, and they have to make an evasive move into your lane. Possibly there are, you know, we just got over a very rough winter. There could be potholes on the streets and they could destroy their bike or get injured or both. And they need to avoid that, and they have to do it quickly, and they make an evasive move and all of a sudden they're weaving into your lane. It's not, again, because they're being lackadaisical. It's because there is an obstruction in the road. And as drivers, we have to take heed to that. Motor vehicle operators, we need to realize that situations like this exist and give them a break when they're on those bicycles and sharing the road with you. Micromobility devices. So we mentioned before briefly that besides bicycles on the road, there are many other vehicles that have shared the road, scooters, mopeds. Well, they are now being designated, and there are other devices, electric bicycles and other new devices coming out like motorized scooters that are populating our roadways. We are designating them now, or they're becoming popularly known under the category of micro-mobility devices. They're sometimes also known as e-mobility devices. They're defined by three common characteristics. Number one, they're motorized. Number two, they're relatively low in speed. They're not going to be going 60, 70 miles an hour in most cases. Number three, they are small in size. So you, an operator, vehicle operator of a car, of a bus, a truck, you want to keep note of the fact that these are going at a lower speed and they may be more difficult to notice. And again, common examples, we mentioned electric scooters, electric bikes or e-bikes, which are becoming very popular these days, and even now self-balancing scooters, which are known as hoverboards, something sort of like a Back to the Future type device, except it doesn't fly.
Lowell, I would just like to interject here that while these scooters were originally low speed, apparently the manufacturers are coming up with some that are much higher speeds. And they're going to actually have events where people race one another on these scooters. And also, many people who ride these scooters are riding them on the sidewalk. So there's been suggested that they should develop cameras that I guess would be similar to a GoPro, but it would be mounted on the handlebars of the device. And this would, I guess, have a design of the streets and what lay ahead of the rider, so that they would know when they're approaching, you know, heavy traffic or an intersection or a pedestrian. But the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety states that approximately 3 out of 5 e-scooter crashes occur on sidewalks. So I'm just saying that as these become more prolific, pedestrians are going to have something else they have to watch out for. And there really currently are not any laws that are specific to governing these devices as far as registering them, training, where they can ride. So everybody's going to be sharing the same piece of roadway. So it's not today, but it's coming.
Yeah, so we have an area that's relatively new for us when it comes to sharing the road, and the laws are not all totally out there yet when it comes to some of these micro-mobility devices. So waits to be seen how that will be addressed. But in the interim, we still have to be leery of the fact that they are on the road, and they are unfortunately also quite often on pedestrian sidewalks. Next, please.
Next. All right, these are just some additional safety hints. These are not necessarily laws. They're just suggestions that have been proven to help keep pedestrians safer. So we already talked about walking on the sidewalk when there is one, when there is none, that you walk facing traffic, that you cross the street at corners or crosswalks. We also recommend that you make yourself as visible as possible, especially if you're walking at night. So be safe, be seen. It helps to wear bright colored clothing. In instances of children, this isn't usually a problem right now because reflective, bright colored articles of clothing are very popular. But for most adults, at least in the New York area, we seem to dress ourselves in black. So also do not text or talk on your cell phone when you are crossing the street or if you're riding a bike. It's just extremely dangerous. It's dangerous for motorists, and it's just as dangerous for pedestrians whose head is down looking at a phone and not looking where they're going. When you walk or bike at night, you should wear reflective garments, apply visible reflective stickers, and make sure that all of these just make you more visible to a driver. And if you're a commuter and you tend to be out later at night and you're on a dark roadway, I would carry a small flashlight so that you can light your way as you walk.
And
Next.
this should also be considered during inclement weather, when it's cloudy out, when it's foggy out, not just nighttime, dusk, dawn, whenever there's a heavy fog or big rains, when the skies are cloudy. Still good idea to have reflectors, flashlights, etc., light colored clothing during those times as well.
Next.
Okay, a few more tips, not necessarily laws, for cyclists. And I would start actually by saying this is a time of year where the weather's is starting to get nice. So I took my first ride last week on one of those really nice days. One little tip, think about ABC. If you're taking the bike out of the garage, ABC. Check the A is for air, check your tires, make sure they're pumped up. If it's been sitting all winter, you probably have low tire pressure that makes it harder to ride, it makes it less safe. So A, air. B is for brakes, check your brakes, make sure that they're working. When you brake a bicycle, if you have 2 hand brakes, which most of us do as adults, you use both of them, you know, gently. You use all the brakes that you have on a bicycle when you're actually braking, but make sure they work. And C is for chain. Just make sure you got a little oil on that chain. It's not too dry. So that's a tip. I think another important tip in terms of riding out with traffic is to be consistent and be predictable. Don't go weaving in and out of lanes. That makes it a lot harder for the driver. Use hand signals when you're riding. You know, you go make a left turn, a right turn. That's communication, you know, with other people. It's going to make you safer. I very often when I'm riding and I hear the car behind me, you know, I look over my left shoulder. I don't necessarily look at the car, but I want them to know that I realize that they're there, because maybe they get a little nervous, you know, driving next to me. So when I do that, I'm just communicating with them, and I try to ride steady so they have a sense of how fast I'm going. So we have some of these things we talked about. Stop at all the road crossings. You know, stop at a stop sign. Stop. It's hard, but that's the law. That's the law. Cindy talked about turning vehicles. As a driver, and most of us are probably going to be drivers watching this, the most dangerous move we make are left turns. So when you're cycling, when you're walking, look out for cars that are making left turns. We make them too fast. We don't square them off. It's a very dangerous situation for pedestrians and cyclists, left turns. You know, we talked about the bell or the horn. Very often, most cyclists, when they're riding in a group and they're going to pass another cyclist, they can ring the horn or they say on your left. That's just protocol to let the other cyclists know that you're passing them. So it's not a surprise. Down at the bottom, you know, it mentions if it's you see this picture of this bicycle, by law, only one person can be on that bicycle. You know, it's a bit more, I think, of an issue for children who sometimes put another kid on the back or stick them up on the handlebars. That's technically, it's dangerous, also against the law. And you also, if you're using headphones, you can only use one when you're riding a bicycle, when you're driving as well. You know, I'll just finish by emphasizing distraction, distraction, distraction for us as drivers, for us as pedestrians. We've touched on it for us as cyclists. We have, you know, visual distractions, we have physical distractions, you know, and we also have mental distractions or cognitive distractions. So if you're riding your bike and you take a phone call, and if you're actually, you know, you're taking your eyes off the road, you're using a hand, you're taking one hand off the handlebars, and you're starting to have this discussion with somebody about what you're going to have for dinner, and you're not necessarily thinking about the traffic scene. So that's a tip for all of us as road users.
Thank you to all of our speakers for taking the time to present this very important topic to our community today. And thank you to everyone who logged on and joined us from afar. The New York Coalition for Transportation Safety continues to coordinate virtual and hopefully in-person programs with the Long Island Health Collaborative for Walk Safe Long Island. So for more information or to request a program, you can reach out to Cindy directly via her contact information seen here, or you can always reach out to me here at the Collaborative. There's my direct number, my email address. And additionally, if you have any feedback about today's program, you know, what did you like? What did you not like, maybe? You know, feel free to share any feedback on today's program with us. That would be much appreciated. And just a few more resources for you. You have the Walk Safe Long Island website, which on the news page on that site, you'll see all of our upcoming events like this one, if you're interested in attending. The New York State Governor's Traffic Safety Committee site is a great resource. The New York State Department of Transportation has really good information about biking in New York. Safe Kids Worldwide and the Tri-State Transportation Campaign are all really great resources for you to check out for additional information. So once again, thank you so much for joining us today.